As we get older, so many of us feel like, are we still a value in this world? Are we still fulfilled in this world? If I don't have answers, then where am I in this world? And that's the part of letting go.
Did you push record?
Thank you so much for joining us today on Our Second Act with Paige and Silka.
For your second act of life. How you doing, Silka?
I'm doing good, Paige. Thank you. And doing good and feeling good is something that we want to focus on today. We just finished a segment on dealing with discouragement. We'll link to that. I know that I was feeling it, you were feeling it. We felt this is important because so many others are feeling it. And today's segment kind of goes along or maybe builds on that a little bit. And that is, finding inner peace and happiness. We're all in search of that, especially right now. And it's, life is challenging enough, but we tend to make it even more difficult by holding on to.
Yeah. Humans are so good at that. We're excellent at that.
Where if we just release some common hang-ups, we might be able to work towards that inner peace that we're seeking so much. So I found an interesting article, and I felt like, God, I think Paige, wrote this. So I wanted to bring up some points to see, what you think and some advice that we can give our viewers. The first one, and luckily I can say I gave this up a long time ago, but the need to be perfect.
That's huge. That's huge. So it's good that you gave that up a long time ago. So many of us still struggle with perfection, which again goes back to how many decades ago, childhood, things happening, whatever it might be. And perfection is also about, if you're perfect over here, then maybe you won't have anxiety. And perfection is about control. You're trying to control your environment because of fear. Then what's that fear about? It's always a tailspin and layers as to what it is about the perfection. So it's really good to ask yourself, what do you feel like you have to be perfect about? Mm-hmm. And then go underneath that and go, what's the fear if I were to let go of that perfection or that perfection or that perfection? So start with the perfection that doesn't feel so big. Start with the small perfections and then practice with that.
Yeah. Great advice. To me, I said years ago, especially when I started this channel, there's only so much you can do by yourself. And it was just freeing when all of a sudden it's like, good enough. This is done. Good enough.
That's
and you know
really
what?
Big for you too, Silka, because I know you.
Yeah, but it is. Sometimes it's good enough is good enough. And that was very freeing I felt very freeing to me. The other thing that was very freeing to me is the need to please people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I always wanted.
I gave up a long
Yeah, I did always want people to like me. I want people like us now, and I know, again, first when I started this channel and negative comments would come in, it's, oh my gosh, I have to react to. It's like, now, you know what? We can't please anybody. We can only be authentic. Let me get your take on that.
Yeah, and that goes back to words like people have heard, people pleasing is home codependent or whatever that might be. But, it's also about boundaries. When you're pleasing people, there's no boundaries. And I want our viewers to hear this. I want you to think about this concept for a second. Figure out, pay attention to where you end and another person begins. Pay attention to where your stuff ends and their stuff begins, because you don't have to carry all of that stuff for their stuff. And it's really important that it's okay if you say no. It's okay if you say that doesn't work for me. And if another person is not comfortable with it, which they probably won't be if you haven't done this regularly, yes, they might leave your life. And what does that say? That says that this was a one-way kind of relationship that was going on. And, there's also this fine line between, I'm not going to please anybody, and I'm going to go all the way over here to the spectrum. Okay, you have to learn the balance of what does pleasing really mean. When it starts to compromise yourself versus compromising because you love somebody or you like somebody, there's a difference there. So you have to really wage that.
Yeah. Well, in our current environment and what we just went through politically, and I don't want to get into a political discussion by any means, but no matter what side you're on, and here in the United States, there are some definite sides.
Yeah.
It did make you realize it's okay if somebody doesn't like me. It was also freeing to let go and hey, it's okay if not everybody likes me. So if that's something that you are dealing with, just know it's not everybody's going to like you, and that's
Can I
okay.
add something to that?
Of course.
On top of not liking you, I think another important factor of that is they don't agree or like the choices you make. Because a lot of times people are afraid to make choices because of what others think.
Yes.
You're not here to live their journey. You're
Mm-hmm.
here to live your journey.
Right.
And you don't have to, I think as we get older, we start to understand that you don't have to explain to anybody the choices that you're making or why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
You just don't.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, and that's another point too. Another hang up is toxic people being, that you don't have, yeah, you don't have to keep people that bring out the worst in you in your life.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because I work with people a lot on this, of course, and so many times the underlying issue is, well, I'd rather have toxic people than no people. And I always cringe like, okay, what's happening with these toxic people?
Yeah.
Now, let's visualize what would happen if they weren't in your life. How does your body feel? Is there a release that goes on? Do you feel a calmness in your brain and your thoughts? Does your body feel better? Do you feel more free? Do you feel more open? And I always tell people too, as you release toxic people from your life, don't expect new ones to come right in right away because there has to be a space and time where you feel what it's like without them and you trust your own judgments and choices and you really get honest and clear about yourself and about who and what you want to come into your life. And then they'll come into your life.
Well, and that relates to another one of the hang-ups, which is the need to be right. We need to let go of that, right? Right?
Right. Well, I think the thing about being right goes back to also perfectionism, what you talked about before. And it also goes back to if you're not right and you don't have the answers, oh my gosh, that's the unknown. And if you're not right, and who are you if you're not right and you don't have the answers? And are you allowed to not have the answers? There's one piece. And then there's some people who are just going on the narcissistic end of, I'm just always right and this is the way it's going to be because I don't want to have to change, blah, 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 blah. And that's a whole other different thing. So yeah, sometimes you have to kind of look at, why do I always feel like I have to be right with everything? And another piece of that can be low self-esteem, that you just don't feel good enough about yourself, or you think people don't see you, or they don't hear you. And then as we get older, so many of us feel like, are we still of value in this world? Are we still fulfilled in this world? If I don't have answers, then where am I in this world? And that's the part of letting go.
Yeah. That is a great point.
Thank you, Sandra.
Great point. We can do a whole other video on that. We
Yes,
kind of have, but not quite to that degree. There's two others that I want to mention, and then if anything comes up for you. But letting go, one, of the past, and then the other, your ego. Talk to me about that.
So we stay in the past because we're afraid of the present and we don't know about the future.
Yeah.
And that's when we have to start to trust. It's really stepping into trust. And I always tell people, start with the small things to trust. And that's where I always bring in, where's your spirituality with this? Where is your faith with this? Where are you on the continuum? Can you start to step into that piece more and let go a little bit more? Because when you let go a little bit more, you don't feel as tight everywhere in here. And also letting go in the past is, doing a ceremony with it. All the things that were beautiful about your past. Thank you, past, for allowing me to do these things, be these things, have these experiences. But it's time for me to open up, because if I keep carrying things that, the past, I could have, I should have, I would have, there's no opening for all the new things that can come at our ages in the future.
Yeah. Well, and any regrets about the past, you can't change it. So,
No,
yeah,
no, but you have to find a space for it.
right.
And when you talked about the ego, that's the ego coming in. So I'm going to have people do a little experience that I do with my clients all the time, and I do with myself. So I want you to get in some kind of stillness or quiet or peace. Go outside, sit down, and I want you to go up to your brain. And I want you to find your ego. The ego will be very easily found because it's always talking. The thing about the ego is the ego wants to be heard. It wants to be included. It wants to know it's important. So when you go up to your ego and say, ego, I need you in my life. You are so vital. You are so important. And I want to include you. So I want you to come down with me to my heart center. And I want you to be with my heart. And I want you to know what that feels like. And the ego will come down to the heart because from a physical standpoint in the embryo, the heart and the brain are together. They grow apart. And what happens is they miss each other. So when you start to bring it back down to the heart, there's calm there. And the ego does still feel important because you're inviting the ego in versus shutting it down.
What a great explanation.
Thank you.
You're so good at this, Paige. You really should do this professionally. Oh my goodness. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, this is something we all deal with, finding inner peace, finding happiness. I mean, that's what really life is about, is trying to find happiness. And yeah, holding on to some of these hang-ups or letting them go might go, even a little bit towards finding that. Paige, we are coming to the end. How would you like to close this out?
There's some hangups that you'll be easily ready to let go. There's some that you'll let go a little bit later, and there's some that you'll struggle with. And just remember to look at the hangup and say, how have you been fulfilling me? Mm-hmm. And is that fulfillment working for me now?
Yeah.
Good there you go.
Good point. Thank you, Paige. And we will see you soon on another segment of Our Second Act with Paige and Silke.
For your second act of life.
If there's a topic that you'd like to have us cover, please visit our website, secondact.tv. We have a little red suggestion box in the upper right-hand corner of our site. Just click on that, send us an email. We'd love to hear from you. See you next time.